Hello, my name is Ella O'Connor. I'm 16 years old, a junior in high school, and I am proud to be Suffolk County's first Teen Poet Laureate. Today, I'm reading near Avalon Park, which is a place very close to my heart for many reasons. The first time my poems were ever published was in their Writer's Cabin publication, and the first workshop I ran as laureate was the Avalon Young Nature Writers Workshop. This workshop represented many of the values I incorporate into my work as laureate: social and environmental justice, youth empowerment, and community connection. My first poem I will be reading for you today is one I wrote during this workshop, called Preserve. Call it a sage tree, even if its leaves are closer to emerald. It has earned the title, uncompromising as a beating drum, the center of a tapestry of bird songs woven into a delicate earth. It has mediated many a battle between the hard-headed eagles, become a repository for young fawns, seen the indefatigable turning of the seasons. Call the water rapid, as it harbors a close-mindedness calamitous, springing with insolence as it carves its own path, wearing on the delicate earth until it caves, creating caverns where abundance once lay, bending each reed to its will, and as it rushes, it taunts the veteran tree, not comprehending how it could possibly keep so still. In the water, any rings would ripple away quickly. Each badge the tree has earned, each lesson learned, would be rapidly sunk if given to the bay, as it speeds along at the pace of rolling thunder. It clashes with the ancient tree, resonating, sending shockwaves through the leaves of grass. But both furies would soon be dimmed by a larger shadow. A shadow that places more value in the dollar than the real, with its indelible hatchet, tearing down ancient wisdom and ensnaring the gulls with its own rough calls. So in a moment of understanding, the tree fortifies, and the young stream drowns out their grunts, and each element crowds to make a cacophonic call for dismissal. The water understands now how it must be careful. And as they flee, a smaller set of shadows emerges from the chaos. This newer shadow stares softly, treads slowly, but thinks loudly. One day, those ideas will begin to heal the world. They sit in a crescent around the shrewd tree, the curvature of their spines twisting into stumps, creating sculptures intended to consecrate, not contaminate, each line that tumbles from their lips an aria of awe. The river runs alongside them as they gallivant through the grass, whooping, warbling with the musicians of the wild, harmonious. We could use more harmony in this world. As a teenager who has been given this incredible platform, I am constantly in awe of other teens who are breaking barriers and creating spaces for their voices to be heard. For example, our country's Youth Poet Laureate Alyssa Gaines, whose writing is paving the way for necessary conversations about identity, gender, and race, changing mindsets with her work. That being said, while we live in a time where the youth is given far more recognition than ever before, it's imperative that we acknowledge it isn't enough just yet. It's crucial we continue in this direction in order to effect positive change to our society. My work as laureate to recognize this includes poetry workshops aimed towards students, amplifying their voices and trying to spread the message that their words have power. I also aim to host a recurring event known as Youth Speaks for Social Justice, a poetry event focused on social justice issues that would act as a fundraiser to help address systemic inequality. With the 2 years I am given, I hope to build an easily accessible online database that features the work of all poets throughout Long Island, including interviews with local poets and opportunities for young writers to be published. I also hope to create not just a network, but a community of youth poets, artists, and activists, using their voices to change the world, so we can all build off of each other's ideas. A recent movement to quiet teens' voices that infuriates me is the movement to ban books in schools. Now, this poem I'm about to read talks about the destruction of the House of Wisdom in Baghdad by the Mongols. One of the most advanced and diverse libraries in history was destroyed by rage and greed, a parallel to the movements to take away books whose goals are to educate and equitably represent students today. The goal was to leave no trace of what was once golden. The house stood over the meandering river, clamoring with the sounds of students sketching their futures, a Fibonacci of ideas stacked one on top of the next. They spoke in metaphysics, defining reality in terms of angles, numbers, space-time, and all the while the river watched, the color of sapphire. But for all their preparations, they never saw the arrows overhead, landing in the heart of their city, citizens bleeding out the exits, leather coverings bound into simple sandals, teaching stomped into the earth as they besieged the house, taking innovation and tossing it in the river. And there might have been no funeral, but the river still flowed as black as obsidian, assembling an elegy from deoxygenated words as they were ferried across the Stygian stream. A bridge could have been formed from those works alone. Instead, no man's journey was supported, making the river a pallbearer, and so went the House of Wisdom. The goal is to leave no evidence of change effective. The house stands over the hallowed academy, clamoring with the sounds of students assembling their futures, each tessera forming a picture of promise. They speak in egalitarianism, defining reality in terms of labor, passion, and skill, and outside, the people come and go, faces crimson red. Only from studying the patterns could they see the fists slamming down, trying to swing at the heart of their stories, replace rhythm with repetition, promoting dust jackets as flimsy as pledges made from pursed lips, teaching stomped into the earth while they besiege the house, holding on to history books, yellowed and spineless. And there might have been no burst of flames, but the fear-ignited suffocated centuries of scrawlings, and diatribes were delegated to drown out difference. They would have liked to flood the classroom with their point of view, but there can be no more muting the messages of mouse and men. Instead, each student is inundated with indignation, making the schoolhouse an echoing chamber, working so wisdom can no longer be drowned. One of my other passions that has started to make itself known in my poetry is international relations and building a global community. This poem was written for my friend Sofia Yatushin, who lives in Ukraine. Since Russia's invasion, we've been able to meet a few times, and during one of our conversations, she told me about how one of the ways Ukrainians identify allies versus Russian soldiers is by having them say polyanetsia, the word for bread. Because of the Russian dialect, they mispronounce it as polonitsia, the word for strawberries. She had me practice the pronunciation of these words, and this exchange led to the creation of this poem. Her optimism and faith in humanity, even in this dark time, should be an inspiration to us all. I intend to continue reading this poem as long as Ukraine is still fighting for their freedom. I do think it's important to note, however, that beyond Ukraine, there are so many other people, especially women, such as in Iran, fighting for freedom. We cannot ignore these crises either. But if this poem moves you, please consider donating to Raise Them for Ukraine, an organization that not only donates medical supplies, but supports projects aimed towards bringing democracy and freedom to Ukraine. Are you listening? Hear the way her mouth stretches to form polyanetsia, drawing out every syllable so I might get it right. Each consonant a punch, punctuated by a memory of planes crowding the sky, geared to protect her home, to ensure the sunflowers never wilt. Hearing the joyful phrase, "You would pass," as she tells me the story of young daughters who even themselves with the soldiers that keep guns drawn to their chest, whose eyes narrow at their request, because they do not possess a willingness to break bread. They confuse the bread for strawberries, thinking they can crush them under their heel and leave the ground splattered red without consequence. But the daughters simply laugh at their mistake, and in the face of ruination, their sagacity holds the city, voices carrying towards the smoky sky. Where does faith go once pushed underground? Does it rattle dimly in a subway station, the echo of 1,000 sirens, each clamoring for your attention? The words you choose may be vessels of faith, but they can only stretch so far. Will you be a passive listener? Hear the way her mouth stretches to form polyanetsia and not sit to practice it with her? Assemble the word with each tool she gives you. Let it ring from rooftops and sing it in the streets. If you have been gifted these words, you must keep practicing the syllables in the mirror. Thank you.